Okay, so you've sent us this book, All Marketers Are Liars. Are you trying to tell us something? Should we be checking our wallets?
I think your wallets are safe for now. This book is less about outright deception and more about the stories our brains crave, especially when we're making buying decisions, you know.
Okay, so less about marketers being sneaky and more about us being predictable.
Yeah, you can say that.
But worldview, that feels kind of big picture. How does that play into, say, my online shopping habits?
It's all connected. Think about it. Why would someone drop like $300 on a sushi dinner at a place like Masa when there's a perfectly good $40 option down the street?
Because they're fancy. Okay, maybe not just that. It's the experience, the story you're buying into, right?
Exactly. Masa isn't just selling raw fish. They're selling an idea. And that idea starts with the customer's worldview, their perception of value, of luxury. They're buying the story before the first bite.
So marketers are like storytellers. I always picture them more, buy now, limited time offer kind of folks.
Well, they do that too. But the really successful campaigns, the ones that stick with you, they tap into those deeper stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we value. It's about connecting on a deeper level.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. But what about when those stories fall apart? Like that whole thing with the Dave Lennox furnace commercials. That turned out to be totally made up, right?
Dave Lennox, a classic example of the difference between a harmless fib and a damaging fraud in the marketing world.
Wait, there are levels to this.
Whoa, absolutely.
So what made Dave cross the line?
The Dave story, this folksy company president, it was a fib meant to make buying a furnace feel more personal, more trustworthy. But when people found out it was completely fabricated, it felt like a betrayal, like they'd been lied to.
Okay, so authenticity matters.
Yeah.
Give me an example of a story that does work, one that feels genuine.
Think about those smart keys on Toyota Priuses. They're not just selling fuel efficiency. They're selling you on being the kind of person who drives a car that knows you're coming. It's a small detail, but it reinforces that story of innovation and connection that Prius buyers are after.
So there's a fine line between a story that, enhances a product
Yeah.
and one that's straight up deceptive. But how much of this is on us, the consumers? This worldview thing. It's like you're saying we're all walking around with these pre-written stories about ourselves, just waiting for a marketer to come along and say, hey, we've got the perfect product for you.
You're catching on. The book argues that every buying decision is driven by a story we tell ourselves, whether we realize it or not. Let's take organic food, for example. Now, you're probably thinking, organic food, that's about eating healthy, right? And you'd be right, but it's more than that.
Okay, so there's more to organic apples than meets the eye, literally. What am I missing?
It's not always actually about the taste, right? Sometimes it's about buying into that story of sustainability, of supporting local farmers. It's about the story we tell ourselves. I'm the kind of person who cares about where their food comes from. And that story, my friend, is powerful.
So you're saying my love for those overpriced, sustainably sourced sneakers is just me buying into a story. Wait a minute. Are you telling me my story is a lie?
Not necessarily. It's about recognizing that those stories exist and understanding how they influence our choices. It's less about lying and more about framing. Those sneakers might be incredibly well made, but the story lets you signal to yourself and the world, I'm the kind of person who values ethical production. And that has value.
Okay, that makes sense. But at what point does this storytelling cross a line? There are got to be some red flags, right?
You're right. Take those harmful baby formula campaigns from a few years back. They were selling a story of modernity, of convenience, that convinced mothers in developing countries to switch from breastfeeding, with unfortunately tragic consequences.
Yeah, that's a whole other level. So how do we, as consumers, learn to spot the difference between a harmless story and one that's potentially, leading us down a dangerous path?
The key is consistency. Look for brands that walk the talk. Does the company truly live the story they're selling? Not just in their marketing materials, but in everything they do. Let's take Kiehl's, the skincare brand, as an example.
Oh yeah, I've been to their store. It's like stepping back in time.
Exactly. It's like walking into an old-fashioned apothecary, right? That's not an accident. That's part of their story. And it's a story backed up by their products, their commitment to natural ingredients, and their customer service. They've woven that narrative into every aspect of their business.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're saying it's not just about the product itself, it's about the entire experience the company creates around it.
Precisely. Think about Cold Stone Creamery. When they first burst onto the scene, it was all about this fun, personalized experience. But as they franchised rapidly, the story got diluted.
Yeah, I get you. It's hard to maintain that handcrafted feel when you're churning out ice cream cakes on an industrial scale.
Exactly. If the employees aren't excited about the ultimate ice cream experience, why should the customers be? The story falls apart. So, to circle back to your question, look for that consistency. Do their actions match their words? Do they live their story?
So if I'm hearing you right, it's not about like rejecting marketing altogether. It's about becoming more like aware, a more discerning consumer.
Yeah.
Understanding the why behind what we buy.
Now you've got it. This book isn't about turning you into a cynic. It's about empowering you to be a more conscious consumer. Don't just buy the product, but buy into the story you want to believe. But remember, hold those brands accountable. Make sure their actions match their marketing magic right now.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to shopping. It's like, before I pull out my wallet, I need to ask myself, what's the story I'm buying into here? And does it even align with my values?
Exactly. And if the story feels flimsy or inauthentic, don't be afraid to walk away. Remember, you have the power to choose the narratives you support, the stories you spend your money on. They all add up to something bigger.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. If our choices as consumers can actually shape the marketplace, then we're not just passive participants in this whole storytelling game, are we?
You're hitting on a crucial point. Every purchase is a vote for the kind of world you want to see, the kind of stories you want told, and those stories, they have the power to change things.
This has been incredibly eye-opening, I gotta say. I came into this deep dive thinking all marketers are liars, but I'm leaving with a completely new perspective.
And that's what we aim for. Knowledge is power, right? Now you're equipped to decode the marketing messages that are like bombarding you every single day and choose the stories you want to be a part of.
So it's less about all marketers are liars and more like all marketers are storytellers, and it's up to us to choose the stories we believe.
There you go. You've cracked the code. And remember, the most compelling stories are often the ones we tell ourselves, the stories we choose to live by.
Wow. Talk about a plot twist.
Yeah.
I guess the question now is, what kind of story do you want to tell? Something to think about.